NATO and Poland say that the missile was UKR stray, easing fears of a wider conflict. Now, this is a huge dispute today. Of course, we're going to talk about later what Zelensky is actually saying. He'll be talking about essentially, it wasn't us. Yesterday, Vlad was like, it wasn't us. And then, of course, yesterday they were invoking Article 4 for, I believe, the sixth time in 73 years. And talking about, obviously a possibility of Article 5 being invoked, which is basically World War III. It says that Poland, a missile that crashed inside of Poland was probably a stray fired from UKR's air defense systems because, again, they fire these things and they go 50 miles the wrong direction. And apparently they were firing it, I guess, at the side of a Russia missile. I don't know. But again, it ended up astray. And it said that Poland and military alliance NATO said on Wednesday, easing international fears that the conflict could spill across the border. Nevertheless, NATO's chief said that Russia, not UKR, was still to blame for starting the conflict in the first place with its February invasion. So I don't know if they're saying that now because they're seeing the huge backlash. If you have not witnessed on Twitter, because they are now saying that it was UKR, pretty much everyone is against the other Vladimir, Mr. Zelensky. Everybody is tearing this guy a new one. They'll just leave it at that. So we're going to talk about this and much, much more. This is huge because obviously there's something fishy going on. Whichever way you look, it's every single option is bad. And again, this is somebody is either getting dumped and being the scapegoat, or something worse is going on behind the scenes. So we'll be talking about this tonight and much, much more. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan.
All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle News. Today, we're going to cover a ton of current events and everything that is going on right now. Huge events have gone on in the last 24 hours. We're going to show you what's going on Twitter. We're also going to show you what is happening, of course, with UKR Vlad, the Article 4 situation. We're going to update on all of that. So this is definitely going to be one not to miss. We are going to try to compact this and get it to as straightforward as possible. And again, it's going to be a short but sweet show, and I hope a lot of people made this earlier time slot. By the way, over on the website, you will make sure go check it out. There is a full bibliography for all of our sources. That way you know exactly where all of this information is coming from. That way you have, I guess, a source for every single article, tweet, video, picture, document we're going to show you here today. And that is done before every single live show. That way you can actually follow along with the second device. We are taping this live, so anything can happen. And then remember down at the bottom, overflow and all the stuff that we could not fit in a 2-hour time period. We have always tried to stay as neutral as possible as a news source. A lot of the political stuff is down there. Yesterday, I actually tweeted out the big announcement of T-Man. I just literally posted where people could find his big announcement. And a lot of people, said, I like your channel because you stay out of politics. posting something. Again, our website covers in-depth politics. So if you're not following, again, we do cover it on our website in depth. So make sure to go check that out. It takes a lot of time to use. But again, I wouldn't not tweet that out. That's a huge, huge story. But I also don't try to push my own politics. Obviously, I am right-leaning. I lean towards the right, but I'm not going to push you to be that way, and I'm not expecting you to be eye to eye with me on every subject. In fact, everybody has their own opinion, and that's how it used to be. We could say, hey, I did this, and I did that, and I put the ballot in this box, and then you could continue a conversation without clawing at each other's eyes like a cat in heat. All right, let's bring in my co-host/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I am doing just fine.
So remember, if we're not live for any reason, we are independent. So we don't have a backup crew. We don't have Tulsi Gabbard to fill in for me or anything. Make sure to go over and check out marfooglenews.com/friends. These are all just people that we are essentially helping you find. These are all mods and creators that we believe in, and great people in general, on and off camera. Bones, CJ Blaze, Jammer One, Lisa R. Hall, PNW Affliction, Rip Curl Readiness, RGL Harris, Ilea, and Trinity will be your mods tonight. However many of them show up tonight, make sure to thank them because they are doing a crazy job with 3,000 to 5,000 people in the chat. It gets nuts. All right, let's get back into the news, and we're going to fly through a lot of this. This is really, really big stuff. It says the world should be worried. Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil producer, just issued a dire warning over extremely low capacity. Here are 3 stocks for protection. Dax, do you want to talk about what this opinion is? And again, this is actually coming from multiple sources now.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about this Aramco in the past, but it seems like it's still getting its good shakedown with the media, especially in the financial world. And you got to pay attention to these finance guys. The market tends to be a very good indicator of what's going to happen and what may not happen, especially when it comes to conflict or big, future expectations like this, like the oil market. So these warnings of low supply obviously are something they can control. They choose not to produce more. That was obviously a pushback at the U.S. We'll see how it plays out in the future. I think, though, that the thing we need to be making sure we're prepared for is understanding that our gas prices are very likely going to go up, especially as we move into winter, even though driving isn't at an all-time high like it normally is in the summer. And we're also hearing of diesel shortages and other things like that around the nation. So all of these things do make somebody who's trying to be prepared be a little bit more concerned about what may come from that.
And just to pull out a quote here, it says today there is a spare capacity that is extremely low. Saudi Aramco CEO Amin Nasser says at a conference in London. If China opens up, the economy starts improving, and the aviation industry starts asking for more jet fuel, you will erode this spare capacity. So we talked about this before briefly. Basically, China has a lot of control over what ends up happening. If they do end up just flipping the switch and turning everything back on and stopping their CV0, policy, we could see some pretty horrendous events happen. And it's pretty crazy to think that the ball is in their court, and supposedly they're doing what they're doing to keep everybody safe, but most people think there's something else going on behind the scenes. If you did witness the speech last night by the former president, there was some pretty cryptic things in there. I was kind of creeped out by the fact that he says it's going to get much, much worse before 2024. Obviously, as a former president, the guy still has a lot of connections and is probably in the know about it. In fact, I believe aren't former presidents even though all the public and everybody can call him whatever they want, but as a former president, can't he still get updates? I remember there was an argument about if they were trying to get it so he couldn't get those updates. But as a former president, I think he has that right, doesn't he?
I do not know specifically what they have access to after the fact. I do know that their clearance is probably still valid.
Yeah, so just the fact that the whole thing that's going on right now with all of the stuff that was at his place, people argued that since he was a former president, he was allowed to have certain information, just not, he wasn't able to share it, or if he did have that information, he was supposed to keep it safe. all sorts of big arguments around that. So I just wonder what he means, and I wonder what he knows. Obviously, during that 4 years, he probably found out a lot of what is actually going on behind the scenes. Maybe he is a part of it. We don't know. But who knows? And then man who threatened plane crash into Walmart dies in prison. It says an airport worker who flew a stolen twin-engine plane erratically over North Mississippi for hours and threatened to crash into a Walmart store has perished in federal prison while awaiting trial. Federal authorities said on Wednesday that the U.S. Bureau of Prisons said that the statement that Corey Wayne Patterson, 29, was found unresponsive Monday in a federal prison in Miami. Responding staff immediately initiated life-saving measures. Staff requested emergency medical services and life-saving efforts continued. Mr. Patterson was subsequently pronounced deceased. Says the statement said no staff or other inmates were injured. Patterson had arrived at the prison in Miami on Thursday. Says Patterson was from Shannon, Mississippi. Before dawn, September 3rd, he took a twin-engine Beechcraft King Air C-90A from the airport in Tupelo, Mississippi, where he had a job fueling planes. Police said he circled over for 5 hours over unnerved Mississippians before ending in the flight safely in a soybean field near Ripley, Mississippi. Patterson was arrested after he landed the plane and jailed on state charges of grand larceny and making terrorist threats. Says he was arrested September 14th and indicted days later on federal charges of destruction of an aircraft and threats involving destruction of an aircraft. So there's a bunch of weird stuff being said about this guy, that he somehow had family members. I saw all sorts of weird stuff on Reddit that this guy was, a TI, an individual that was, focused in on or something. I don't know if any of that's true, but I do know. Obviously, you've only been in jail for a few days and you perish. I guess that's kind of how jail works, right? I guess that's a realistic thing too, is you go in there and the toughest guy, you don't punch him in the face, then who knows, you might end up unresponsive. It happens in prison a lot. I don't know if that's what's going on there, but I guess we'll see, and we'll update if there's any change. And then MI5 spy chief says Russia, China, and Iran top threat list to UK. Dex, this isn't really a surprise. Obviously, they changed all their money about 4 or 5 years ago to these. Now they're kind of making it official.
Well, yeah, they've got to have an adversary. MI5 needs someone to point the finger at. So these are the 3 obvious ones. I would expect number 4, if they had one, would be NK. So yeah, this list is no surprise at all. But it is coming out as a sort of a public statement, and it's interesting that it's coming out right in the middle of G20, or as G20 is wrapping up, and all these leaders were together. So at least Xi was over there with UK and snuffed the UK Prime Minister after a run-in with Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, Mr. Sunak. Is it Sunak or Sunak? Sunuk? He's the same prime minister that about a week and a half ago ended up, getting rushed out of one of the summits. I want to say, was it the same summit that he was rushed out of? It was or the COP
no, that was a
27.
COP.
That was the COP 27. And he was rushed out of that after an aide came and talked to him for a minute. They're all on stage, about 6 of them, or 7 or 8. And the aide's talking to him, and you could tell that they're discussing, and they're like, no, I'll stay. And you can see him putting his hand like, nah, it's okay. And then a second aide comes over and says something, and then they get up immediately and rush out of the room. And you could see, I watched that video several times to see what his facial reactions were. He looked scared. At one point when he's walking alongside the crowd, he's just sitting there. He looks very similar to what I guess Mr. Bush looked like when he was told at the elementary school, even though we know what was up with that. But yeah, very, very, very weird scenario there. And we still don't know exactly what happened and where he exactly went. They say one thing, but then others say another. And by others, I mean other news around the world reported it differently. So which filter is right? And then NATO says that Russia ultimately responsible for the perishing people in Poland that may have been from air defense missile. That may have been, probably. They don't know. How little control do they have over giant missiles that end up going 50 miles in the wrong direction? I hate to say it, but I'm just like, So you have to understand, this might be something where they have to take a hit or something. If this was Vlad's missile, and yesterday, by the way, Dex, do you remember when this first happened? I said, watch, they might say that it was Zelensky's, and they might say that it was him protecting. And then first off, there were suggestions of it, and people poo-pooed that, and now they're saying that it was. So basically, all this barrage, because it was at the same time, the barrage hit UKR, and apparently this was supposedly a missile that was trying to hit the other missiles out of the air. So then they said that this is one of the missiles that was trying to hit the Vlad's missiles, and it just kept going, and then it hit Poland. That to me, again, we'll go over what Zelensky said about it. He's denying it. He is one of the most hated people on Twitter right now, which is kind of crazy because he was the world's hero. He's profile pic man, green shirt profile pic man of the universe. He was all over Facebook. Everyone that, didn't know the story of like the last 10 years of UKR, everybody's like, yeah, he's awesome. He plays a good president. But again, this whole thing, he is denying. He's saying it wasn't ours. And yesterday, he was calling for WW3. He was calling for them to invoke Article 5. Today, they're saying it was him that did it. How ugly does that look? If it was Vlad's, and maybe just say he's right. If it was Vlad's, then maybe they really did need to prevent WW3. Maybe they used the red phone and said, hey, we gotta have a scapegoat somewhere. Maybe we'll have to say it was his. Otherwise, when you have even two civilians, it doesn't matter if it's one. It doesn't matter how many it is. If it's somebody's civilian in the NATO territory, they obviously have a promise. And it doesn't even matter how all of the states, that state, if it feels like it needs the help, then Article 5, will be called in. It says NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Wednesday said a preliminary investigation suggested that the missile that fell in Poland and took the lives of two was likely from UKR's air defense system, but then said that Vlad was ultimately responsible for people perishing. It says this is not UKR's fault, he told reporters. It says that Russia bears responsibility for what happened yesterday because this is a direct result of the ongoing conflict. It says UKR has the right to shoot down those missiles and target UKR cities, And it says concerns mounted Tuesday after one anonymous U.S. official told the Associated Press that missile landed in NATO territory and prompted leaders from the military alliance to scramble to discover what happened. It said that President Xi and Western leaders have repeatedly warned Vlad against expanding its war in Europe and have vowed to defend every inch of NATO territory. And it says sparking concern that the missile strike could prompt a massive escalation. It would have been an Article 5 WW3 scenario, which again does not mean nuclear. It means that, troops all over the world ended up going in and it gets us involved. Stoltenberg attempted to ease concerns regarding any attempt by Vlad to purposely hit NATO nations and said the alliance has constant land, air, and sea-based defense system on alert. But reporters questioned why the rocket that took the lives of two was not blocked by one of these defenses. Again, I don't know. Do they have the Iron Dome yet, Dex? I know they asked for it.
No, they have a very old system, and they just recently got some of the technology that we use in DC. But no, they don't have the Iron Dome yet.
Yeah, so that's kind of a dumb question because it very well possibly. Do they even have a system that could take out the kind of missiles that it was? I'm not a war expert, and I'm not a missile expert for sure. I think that would literally be a rocket scientist, but I can tell when something is fishy here when you have multiple sides saying that, oh, that's not true, it's him, it's them. Now their hero, Zelensky, is now basically being looked at as a warmonger, and it flipped overnight. And what's crazy to me is both the right and the left are both kind of, I feel like they're falling into a trap, and I feel like this totally worked if it's how I think. Because now everybody has turned against Zelensky, the writer saying, oh, this guy's a psychopath and all of that. And it's pretty wild. In fact, it was trending number one. I believe it most likely still is. Let me just show you real quick. Pretty crazy stuff. So let's see. Zelensky. Yeah, so if you look at this, it's like you see a lot of the players. Remember yesterday when a UKR missile hit Poland and Zelensky immediately blamed Vlad and used the incident to try to pull Western governance into a global nuclear war. Everybody says nuclear, by the way. It says, because that's just what people assume, right? It says NATO needs to act. This is a Vlad missile strike. This is a very serious escalation. Put Russia in its place. That's what Zelensky UA said about the missiles that hit Poland. Now we know that these were UKR missiles. Stop supporting this lunatic. See, now this is kind of crazy because if there is going to be further support, it's on both sides that everybody's like, no, UKR, nobody is supporting this anymore. So this is going to be wild. If for many people that think that this is going to be a years-long thing, it's very hard for anybody, for them to send them billions of dollars when the entire U.S. population and people around the world do not support it, and they just basically dumped him. The thing is when you realize the history of UKR, if you realize the history of Zelensky and his TV shows that he played a president and all that stuff, and once you realize all of this stuff, you're like, well, this is really weird. And it's the U.S. saying, hey, this was a UKR stuff. This was UKR hitting it. Are they doing that? And they're basically like saying, hey, Vlad, sorry, we can't do this because this is WW3. If it is Vlad, and maybe they're just dumping him. Maybe they're done with him. I don't know. That's what it seems like. Again, it is very clear. I mean, it's like everybody went nuts, and it's very specific people that just kind of, I don't know. I think there's something weird here, and I obviously think that something funky is going on, and I don't think it's the end of it, but I most definitely think things are changing rapidly. So we'll go back into some of that stuff in a little bit. All right, before we move on, I do want to remind you, if you have not already, if you do want to protect yourself against an EMP, I'd highly recommend going over and checking out EMP Shield. Marfooglenews.com/EMP, you'll see that there's a device that is made to actually ground the signal of both EMPs and CMEs, or a Carrington level event, in less than 500 trillionths of a second before it's able to fry your car, fry your trucks, fry your generators, fry your house. They make like 40 plus devices, all made for something different. They even have one for a ham radio. These are devices that are external, that are wired into it, so then you don't need a Faraday cage. You can't put your whole house in a Faraday cage, but you can wire in an EMP shield. The talk that we had yesterday about cars stopping and pretty much anything over 1996 with the ECMs, all of that stuff would be fried, power brakes, all sorts of things. If you want to protect all that, you can. EMP Shield is the same company that's been outfitted with agencies like DOD, DHS, and now on the DEMSO team helping protect the Texas grid. So it's how they're protecting themselves. There's little reason for us to not look to try to protect ourselves with this. It's very easy to put in your car if the car is the main concern. If you want to be able to get home after an EMP or a CME possibly hits, then this is definitely a good thing. And it's easy to wire in about 10 minutes. That's marfooglenews.com/EMP. When you do so, not only will you get $50 off per device, that stacks on top of any holiday sales they're doing, and it will help our channel at the same time. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for supporting independent media at the same time as protecting yourself. All right, and then Dex, why don't you cover the next one? World leaders plot response after missile hits Poland, taking the lives of 2.
Yeah, this article does a good job of sort of giving you the play-by-play of how things unraveled, especially with everybody at G20. When JB went into an emergency meeting, which phone calls were made when, and it's kind of, it makes I would take this and like layer it in with the other information that we get about, at one point they said, oh, we don't know who did it. Then the next point they were pointing the finger at Vlad saying he did it. And then this morning we all wake up and they're like, well, we're wrong about that. We need to backpedal and say it was just an errant error from UKR's defense system. So this story is really it's really fluid in the sense that a lot has changed in a very short amount of time. That does happen with breaking stories like this, but it's also interesting to see how this exactly played out with the different steps that were taken and who met with who at what time. So that's what this is basically going through.
And it's a possibility that if it was a Vlad missile, would they come up with something to where it wasn't? We know that in past history that they have, is if it's not a horrendous, humongous event, and like people said, it was 2 people, which again is enough to invoke Article 5, depending on the conditions, then they might want to just say, hey, this was an accident or this was that, and we need to do something about it. Dex, go ahead.
Well, and the flip side is if they found out it was Zelensky doing it and doing it to try to suck NATO in, they could also hold the same position and act like it's an accident and not allow that action to bring them in.
Yeah, it could have been Fantastic Freddy style. It could have been a Fantastic Freddy, but somebody caught it, or they had evidence, or there was something left behind, a loose string, and then if they were to go forward with it and try to push this into WW3, somebody would find out, and then the whole thing would crumble. I still think we're looking at some sort of harbor event or some sort of 2001 type thing to get everybody on the right side, and again, like everybody in general, not the right or left, but everybody, bloodshot eyes, just trying to go, head over heels into conflict. They would need an event, huge event, to get people not only turned to where they want to go to conflict, but want to enlist and want to go protect their countries and everything else. That would take a huge event. And only a huge event like that would be what would turn people all of a sudden from not wanting a conflict to, gung-ho, let's go get those MRFers. And then Poland missile attack. It triggers surprise clash as blame game spirals. So Dex, they're pointing the finger at each other. And I wasn't surprised that he said this, because now he is the scapegoat. He is literally the person that everyone is blaming, whether they are on either side of the aisle. Everybody is pissed off. They're basically
exactly. And he's saying specifically, like, that it sounds like he's not being allowed to participate in the investigation. And so he's saying, hey, we know that's not our missile and we should have the right to participate in the investigation. So this just really flips the story around quite a bit, because it sounds like Zelensky wants everybody to think it was Vlad. What does that do for him? It gets NATO's involvement. NATO doesn't want to get involved, so they point the finger at Zelensky and just say it's an accident, so we don't have to escalate, because they don't really want to escalate. And, Vlad is probably sitting on the sidelines going, those people are nuts.
Well, we don't know what exactly is happening here, but just hours after NATO's leadership announced that the preliminary investigation into a Intel strike in Poland Tuesday was likely caused by UKR air defenses and not a deliberate Vlad attack, UKR President Vlad Zelensky is doubling down and insisting UKR is not responsible. It says, I have no doubt that it was not our missile and our missile strike. He says, we have to participate in the investigation. And of course, they said no. And then it says, Dmytro Kuleba, the UKR Ministry of Foreign Affairs, shared a tweet claiming the allegations of UKR air defense was in Poland were false and, get this, a conspiracy theory. So is this a cut and dry scenario? No. And something big might have just happened here. And again, this was one of the biggest. If Article 4 was being called and they were meeting to discuss what happened, maybe they discussed it and said, hey, we got to dump this guy off. Or maybe they said, we can't go to WW3. Or there were half of the people saying, we need to go to WW3. The other half was like, no, this isn't big enough, or something. Something big happened here. And I think most of us know this. In history, there have been big events. Look, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the population, the civilians, didn't really know much of how close we got to generally a huge conflict. This could have happened, much before. But usually they have, said something publicly and brushed it under the rug, talked to each other, calmed it down, given the media a story they could run with, and then, it all went back to normal. I don't know if that's what's happening here, because obviously now UKR is going to have a tough time with the public. This is weird. It's like something changed. Maybe it has something to do with that whole crypto thing that happened and people finding out about different stuff. I don't know. But it says NATO aircraft tracked missile that crossed into Poland. So now they have tracking. It says a NATO aircraft above Polish airspace on Tuesday tracked the missile that landed in the country. It says that NATO aircraft have been conducting regular surveillance around UKR since the Vlad invasion began. The aircraft flying above Poland on Tuesday was monitoring events in UKR. The NATO official did not say who launched the missile that was tracked landing in Poland, nor it was fired from. So wait, they tracked it, they saw it going, but they can't tell you who it came from? Dex, doesn't that...
Or they just didn't say. They just didn't say. They don't want to say. They know. They know exactly what it is, and they don't want us to know.
We're not high enough, We're just we're just the civilian trash. Something big happened, and we're just going to be told it's nothing. What do you guys think? I'm going to go over to the chat real quick, and then thank you everybody that has popped in. By the way, thank you for all of the folks over on Twitter that actually, few people said that they miss us because we're always on too late. Thank you, and I appreciate you guys. And if you have missed us, try coming back. We're going to start doing a couple earlier shows a week. It'll probably be even earlier than today. Let's see here. And then a 5.4 magnitude earthquake strikes near Mentone. I'm going to turn on the chat here. We have Andreas Binder, John Wick, Paul Shaggy, James King, Claude Doshi, Denise Martinez. Says, I cashed out my Ethereum I bought at 75 and cashed out at 1,500. I had 8 coins. Denise Martinez, that sounds awesome. It sounds like UK are trying to frame Vlad and start WW3, just like what Ogle County, Illinois just did to Zion. By the way, that may be what they want us to think. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's 4D chess. You have to think, 2 steps ahead, too. Wages in the house. What's going on, Wages? Callie Singh, Digital Revolution, Brian Brady. Much love from Michigan. Hi from Love, Michigan. There's an actual Brian Brady. I didn't know there was a Love, Michigan. This was a Cuban Missile Crisis event, says Jake Malone. So I'm agreeing with you, actually. Happy for the early shows. Suburban Chicagoland checking in. Prepared Chicagoland. What's going on? Jaeger 494. Hope you're all doing well. Almost paid for that graphics card. Android Architect. Yeah. Jaws Wolf. Zelensky is determined to get NATO boots on the ground, not interested in compromise. And then Rob Mills says, I seriously doubt that Vlad did it. They would have nothing to gain from it. The other Vlad, UKR, just wants WW3. But that would be suggesting that he got into the position normally and that he wasn't put in by somebody. You see what I'm saying? That he wasn't, put there for a reason. That he does a good job acting like a president. Hey, UKR attacked NATO, Grandpa C says. DWD David Way, living in a world that keeps pulling on me. And then, hey, Marfoogle family, Oscar Reyes, MZJDN, thank you for being here. Muller, how was it? Terrible concern here for you. CR user, what's going on? Jammer1, Marfool's Gold, haven't seen you in a while. Nice to see you. The Real Picard says G is pronounced she. I like G. If I pronounce his name right, that means I'm respecting him. Anthony of the Gold, LOL, my family, Secret Service, and CIA. I know things, and they are lying about Vlad and the media, says Anthony on the Gold. Well, I would love if any of those folks would call in. Barry Fowler, true that, Adam. Only the Lonely, and then No Malarkey, Wages World, Little Bear, thank you so much, Candy556, and everybody else that just made it in. Appreciate you guys. Dex, go ahead.
Hey, BP Earthwatch was in earlier and made this comment, and it kind of segues into what we're about to talk about. But he says, Adam, the North American craton shifted today.
So, okay. So, can we get us? Can you check on BPs and see what he was saying about it? What do you mean, the whole craton?
Well, I think it goes hand in hand with this large quake in Texas that we're about to talk about. But yes, there was probably a shift from it. That's what's being said in chat that Dutch was covering.
Oh, man. I haven't watched Dutch in a couple months just because I've had so much going on. I did see a video that he did the other day about some... I didn't click on it, but he showed on the thumb, it showed radar coming from somewhere, and I was thinking, man, there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on. It says the USGS is reporting that a magnitude 5.4 earthquake shook much of West Texas around 3:30 p.m. Wednesday. The quake struck west-southwest of Mentone, about 35 miles northwest of Pecos, at a depth of 5.5 miles. It was followed by 4 aftershocks, including a magnitude 3.8, a magnitude 3.4, and a 2.8 and 2.6. This is the third strongest earthquake ever to strike Texas and the strongest since 1995. Other West Texas areas on the list of the strongest in state history include Fort Davis, Alpine, and Loving Country. That's awesome. Is that really? Oh, Loving County. I thought it was Loving Country, so like love and country. Loving County. So that worries me. If that shifted, wouldn't that affect stuff like the Cascading Subduction Zone and other things? Go ahead, Dex.
Yeah, I would think it would. BP did actually do a video. I put it on our website so people can go watch it after the show. It'll be in Overflow. It's called The North American Craton is Shifting.
That's freaky, and I wonder if that has anything to do with the poles shifting and everything else. In fact, I want to do an update on where and what has happened with the poles shifting. Obviously, we covered it about a year ago. Things have changed even since then, and we covered it in depth back then. But we're going to do another deep dive into it and see what is going on. Speaking of earthquakes, and again, most people here have been through one if they're on the West Coast. A lot of folks have never been through one. In fact, probably a lot of Texas people have not dealt with an earthquake. So that was probably very strange for them. But any kind of disaster, including local disasters that will happen, storms that knock out your power, it's highly recommended that you have some way to replace that power. We are completely dependent on power, but yet most people don't have something to back it up. They just depend on the grid coming back up. Well, there's events that could happen where the grid just doesn't come back up. And that's why we recommend getting a solar generator, specifically from Energy. Energy is one of the best brands out there. It's one of the most coveted. In fact, people were waiting upwards of 6 months to get one at one point. And that was not fun for anybody, but people waited that 6 months to get the Flex 1500, which the Flex 1500 is the unit that I have. I also have the Kodiak LT, which is the small one, which is this one. This guy does a lot of, if you have a lower budget and you just want to be able to like charge your phones and stuff, this is a good one. The Kodiak LT. But I have the Flex 1500. The Flex 1500 is modular. This one, you can expand up to 96 batteries. And it works like Legos. So if you want 5 batteries, you just stack 5 batteries underneath the head unit, and they all stack on top of each other. Then you can link those in stacks of 5 up to 96. So if you want backup power for months, you can do that. Or if you just want something that carries a few days of power, you can grab a head unit with the battery. And then, of course, this is great because you can actually keep charging it with solar. As long as most people try to get enough power so they can power everything they need to have for a day or for 2 days or for 3 days to make it safe, and then be able to recharge that the next day. There's very few downsides to, of course, lithium solar generators. The one downside would be, I guess the one emergency and the one event would be if we had a nuclear fallout and nuclear winter and the entire world was covered in, in dust or something, or a volcano that covered the sky in ash. But other than that, as long as you have sun, you have power. With gas generators, which I highly recommend if you had both, if you have the ability, get both. But with a gas-powered generator, you have to have fuel. And fuel, obviously, is becoming harder to get. They're trying to switch everything to electric. It is going to go up in price even more. And, of course, you have to store a dangerous fuel. This, you don't have to. And it is silent, which means you can run this inside. There's no dangerous fumes that come out of it. There's no loud noises. Nobody's going to hear it from 3 blocks away the second that the power goes out. And it's portable. So again, this is one of the best systems out there. I would also, if you want it sooner and if you just want, if you were just going to get a head unit and one battery, the Flex 1500, then I'd highly recommend getting a Kodiak X2. This actually has a little bit more power in it than, say, one of the Flex batteries has, but it's built in. So this you can't alter, but it's a built-in system that can last 6,000 charges, decades, basically, and it's a UPS. It's uninterrupted power supply. It's a seamless backup, so when things turn off, this thing kicks back in. You can actually dual link 2 of them to output pretty much power anything you want. Again, it has awesome stats. Make sure to go check it out. marfugglenews.com/energy with an I and use the code Marfoogle. That again is the X2, and then the little one that I held up, that is the small LT. That's the Kodiak LT. Thank you guys for supporting us. When you do so, you are giving us a small commission and getting a big discount, upwards of $170 off, depending on the package. And we might actually have, go ahead, Dex.
Hey, I just wanted, before we move to the next subject, I just wanted to mention one more BP comment. He said the last major shift in the Craton caused the new Madrid quake. The Mississippi River ran backwards because of the center of the rotation of the Craton is in the New Madrid, Missouri. So that's kind of interesting as to why it's so significant. So again, we've got that video linked up on our website, so you guys can go find it after the show.
And the New Madrid, that would be isn't there the ability to have a massive earthquake? That's the thing, like, most people in that area have never dealt with anything like that. Now, we might actually have Wages and the lifeboat come on in the next couple days to talk about this, because scientists create a V for the Fentanyl, for this stuff, right? The frighteningly potent opioid killing 200 Americans. I don't know. Does it say 200? It's a lot more. In fact, so the people that are perishing from this, by the way, from the actual drug, that has surpassed both car crashes and bang events combined. It's like over 100,000 people. It broke records this year or last year. It's incredible, and it has taken over. If you remember, of course, Hollywood and everybody, a lot at one point was into cocaine. Then they were into heroin. Of course, then now heroin, since a lot of it came from Afghanistan, has now disappeared. Now it is this stuff, and people call it blue, people call it all sorts of stuff, and for some reason, all of the different medias, they don't like that word. We know where 99% of it is made, Shi's country. We also know that, obviously without that connection to Afghanistan, that a lot of that stuff went out and this came in. Well, this is much more potent. Just the powder, if you did a snort of the wrong stuff or barely got some on your hand, you could perish. It is taking a lot of lives, and now they have created to stop this, to basically, is this the same one? Yeah, it has this kind of graph. This is easier to say it. It makes antibodies form in the blood. The kidney processes the stuff and removes it. The antibodies prevent the stuff from reaching the brain, and adjuvant given in 3 shots. They're treating it like it's a virus. They're treating it like it's some sort of weapon. That was my thought on it. But I'll have the lifeboat and Wages. Some are looking at it like it's a good thing. So I'll have somebody who knows a lot more about it come on the show in the next couple days. It is an important subject. I know that there's probably people here that are, definitely held down by this stuff. It is probably the worst thing that has come out in, decades. It is far worse than its predecessor. It's far worse than anything out there. And if you haven't noticed, when you see the 12, 13, 14-year-old kids that are homeless and they're just looking messed up, and now but by the way, they're targeting, some of this is targeted at kids. It's bad. And that's what they're doing. Dex, did you have something to say on this?
Yeah, it's just, like their example of giving it to your teen before they head off to college so they're protected. It's unfortunate that we're at a place in our trust level of our medical community that technology like this, even if it's right, even if it actually works, is scary to so many people because of a lot of the other things that have happened in the past. So, I'm not saying I don't know a thing about this. I haven't researched it. I don't know if it's good, if it's bad, whatever. I'm just taking it on face value. But it would be a shame if something like this actually was good and worked, and we weren't able to make use of it because of the state of the attitudes of everyone on both the sides that create this stuff and the sides that receive this stuff. It's kind of unfortunate that we're at this place.
So if you kind of know the deep down stuff on this, there's been quotes by the people that run pharma. They say that V word is what the future is. That's where the money is at. Something you have to take every year. Something that is recurring. It's a recurring payment. That's just what's being said. And they said that is the future of the finances. They're saying that's a financial goldmine. The people in 2021 that became billionaires, it was very public. They were all part of that same industry. And they said that this is the future. This is, we're going to be able to make things that prevent cancer and things like this, but they'll all be one of these, right? So that will be the way that they substitute, because a lot of people have believed, and this is, allegedly, that there is a cure for everything, right? But they wouldn't want to do that because then who's going to buy their $800 a pill things, right? Well, if you were able to basically take that same amount of money and just squeeze it into a once-a-year thing that's paid for, then yeah, that could work. No, everybody would be happy and healthy as long as you were absolutely rich and had the best insurance out there. I don't know, but also they've been coming up with something like this for everything. They're like, get this for if you have pinky cramping, then we've got a V for you. Go ahead, Dex.
But again, like the theory on it is great. It's like it makes a lot of sense to take someone and prevent them from getting something that it takes someone to deal with them after they've gotten it and they've destroyed their body and try to bring them back to good health, which is what a lot of our current medicine does today, is reactionary. I'm not saying this as a proponent of, what they're all trying to do with those things and making them normalized in our society. But the logic behind it at some level is actually correct. It's just the way it's been going down and the lack of trust from all around in that is really disheartening. And I think that's what's going to make it not work.
Totally agree. And then Vlad Colonel, who helped Putin's mobilization, mysteriously perished right in the face. Colonel serving as deputy head of one of Vlad's top Navy's colleges has been found perished in mysterious circumstances, according to local reports. They say he was grasping a picture of Bill and Hillary. I'm just kidding. Vadim Boyko is said to have been responsible for working with troops recently called up under Vlad's partial mobilization order for the conflict against UKR. He reportedly showed up to work early on Wednesday at the Marikov Pacific Higher Naval School in Vladivostok and was found with at least one bang-bang wound to the dome. Several local media reports were quick to deem his death a self-taking, with the Far Eastern Gazette reporting that he fired a bullet in his temple. The news outlet said Boyko's have been confirmed with sources within the Pacific Fleet via station. It says, yes, Colonel Boyko committed blank within the walls of the Naval College, an unnamed source were quoted saying. Then it said the channel, citing unspecified sources, says multiple bang-bangs were heard outside of Boyoko's office just before Dark's desk sergeant went in and found 5 wounds. to the chest. So he went like this, boom, boom, and then boom, 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 just to finish it off, Or maybe he did it first and then was like, it's not working, I'm too tough. And then boom, boom. And then he was like, I got to get one from the back. So he was like, I'll hold this piece of metal up in front of a mirror and then I'll ricochet, and because that's how you do it. I mean, that's what Hillary said. And then Vlad's economy in free fall as it officially enters recession in nightmare for Vlad. Before the full effects of sanctions had been felt, the Vlad economy grew 3.5% year on year with the first quarter of 2022. Vlad's economy ministry predicts GDP will fall by 2.9% this year, while the central bank expects a 3 to 3.5% drop before a return to growth in the second half. It says, however, there's skepticism of the true state of Putin's economic woes, with the Kremlin prone to hiding in potential missteps and weaknesses. In August, a Yale School of Management study used unconventional data sources and said Vlad was publishing increasingly cherry-picked figures, selectively tossing out unfavorable metrics while releasing only those that were more favorable. Dex, do you have a comment on that?
Well, of course he would. Why would he put out unfavorable information, especially in conflict time, especially when everybody's trying to sanction him? Certainly his economy is going to take a hit. I would expect if he comes out, which they did, the Russian economy ministry predicts a 2.9% decline as opposed to their 3.5% growth. I would expect that whatever number they say, it's probably worse than that, because why would they, what's in it for them to be truthful on this? They're in the middle of a conflict, and they're trying to at least show face that they can be strong and withstand the sanctions that are happening. So I would expect that number to be much lower, or a larger miss.
Yeah, especially during the events that are going on right now. And then Taiwan shows off its radar killing kamikaze drones. Says Taiwan this Tuesday invited the media to an exhibition of various capabilities from its locally developed drone arsenal. Two specific systems were highlighted in the coverage of the event were vehicle-launched Yen Hasang loitering munition and the Tangyun reconnaissance drone that is known for bearing a resemblance to the MQ-9 Reaper. The exhibition showed off diverse uncrewed developments in Taiwan, which could be a factor in future conflict with the mainland as threats to the island of sovereignty grow. It's basically these things can, it says, provided an especially rare look at one weapon in particular, a truck-launched Chen Susang. These indigenous anti-radiation loitering munitions are designed to take out enemy radars positioned at sea, on the coast, or inland, according to NSCSIT. Says the company also claimed that Chen Hasang can strike other unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, but it wasn't made clear exactly how this was achieved. It's possible it could home in on the emissions of slower-moving drones and attack them, but it would be relatively limited and questionable use. And then we have President Xi humiliates Trudeau as he is caught on camera tearing strips off of Canadian Prime Minister. President Xi humiliates Trudeau as he is caught on camera tearing strips off of Canadian Prime Minister that their conversation at the G20 has been leaked to the papers. It's not appropriate. Dex, do you want to cover what happened here?
Oh yeah, I watched the video. He was really getting onto him. Now, I gotta give it to Xi. He's got a good sort of poker face, but you can sort of tell when he's mad and upset. But he basically told him, hey, and I'm not quoting him word for word, but he's like, look, we had a private conversation, and then as soon as it's done, everything's leaked to the press. So if you want us to talk again, we're gonna have to set some ground rules. I'm not doing this. Like he basically didn't verbally tear him a new one, but politically sort of said, yeah, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. That's not the way to have a diplomatic relationship and have a private conversation between two leaders and then turn around and leak everything. And then he turned around right after that and snubbed UK's prime minister and said, nah, I'm not going to meet with you either now.
He said, oh, somebody went, oh, snap. And then, can the Air Force train new pilots without planes? It says airmen are gearing up for what could be the most consequential move in military pilot training since the Air Force was created in 1947, teaching students to fly without stepping foot in a real airplane. This is stupid. It says the new program known as Air Mobility Fundamental Simulators is the Air Force's next step in a years-long attempt to modernize pilot training without sacrificing quality. It's also an opportunity for the service to embrace more cost-effective technology and retire its 30-year-old fleet of T-1A Jayhawk trainer jets. But experts warning that turning out experienced pilots is more complicated than trading in airworthy cockpit for a replica. There's a lot of value to a simulator, but there's something fundamentally different when you're up in thin air. It says a retired Air National fighter pilot. There's no do-overs. There's no resets. So, yeah, you can't just say, oh, I messed up or I crashed into a tree. You can't push reset. You do that in real life, you're dead. Dex, I wonder if this is because they are going to need so many pilots and they're not going to be able to train them in time that they're thinking about this. I wonder if this is because they see something coming.
I don't know that, or it's just a stupid budget cut. Somebody is looking at it and saying, well, you know what? We don't need to replace those planes. Why can't they sit behind a computer screen and learn? It sounds dumb to me because I totally agree. There's got to be that fear factor. I mean, yeah, you could learn to ride a bike on, some sort of digital screen that tells you how to ride it. But until you're, balancing that wheel left and right and not skinning your knees up by crashing on the ground, will you really have the feeling of what it would take to not hurt yourself, or in this case, in something more significant like a plane, not have yourself be destroyed because you make a mistake. It's a lot different when you've got all that pressure. That real pressure, not fake pressure.
Yeah, and it just sounds like something that somebody made in a suit and tie at a desk, and they went to a meeting. They're like, well, do we even need these planes? I mean, how good are the simulators? And they're like, oh, well, they're really good. They're pretty accurate. They're 100% accurate. Well, then let's do away with physically training them. We could save, what, $400,000 a day. Let's do it. And then a war against Russia happens, and then we're effed. Go ahead.
I could see a point where we don't have pilots in planes, but that's only when we're at a point where everything is autonomous. And if anything, they're flying from the ground, which is what they do with the current drones today. But outside of that, like if you're going to put somebody in a cockpit of a giant box that's moving through the air at thousands of miles per hour, then yeah, they need to have some real training.
Absolutely. And then lab-grown meat cleared for human consumption. First off, I do want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you for all of the people that have popped in. Today was a shorter show, so I wanted to make sure to get through it. Thank you, and thank you. Be Real Beast says, oh, thank you. It says it's payday, some for you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. God bless. Zen Wen, thank you so much. Much love, and please be kind to each other. Thank you, Zen Wen AZ. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Rhino Knightley, Chanel Bivaliqua, BT777, Nana of Montana. Thank you guys. I appreciate you. And then over on D Live, Scooby-Doo Right, Kelly2334. Thank you, and it's nice to see you again. Kimbria, J-Girl, that's me. Vicky K, thanks for your nightly stop by. Big Fish, Paul Shaggy, and of course, Priscilla R. Thank you, and thank you again for stopping by. And then just a quick shout out, Kenny Crowder, wherever you are, MT Will 1776, Charity Sullivan, Joe Vogt, and then Johnson and Man Overboard Media. So obviously we've talked about Mr. Gates and his dream for lab-grown meat. It says that it's cleared for human consumption by U.S. regulator. This is the start. It says the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, for the first time cleared a meat product grown from animal cells for human consumption. The agency announced on Wednesday. Upside Foods, a company that makes cell-cultured chicken by harvesting cells from live animals and using the cells to grow meat in stainless steel tanks, will be able to bring its products to market once it has been inspected by the U.S. So we're going to have lab-grown meat all of a sudden. That's disgusting. Dex?
No thanks. I'm not interested in it right now. I don't know until they, I don't even know if ever there comes a point where I really want to think about having lab grown meat. It just doesn't sound right. But that's just me. I don't know. I'm not signing up for it anytime soon.
Yeah, me neither. Would you guys eat lab grown meat? Let me know in the chat right now. Press 1 if you would eat it. 2 if you're never going to touch it. 3 if you might try it. Tom Ludwig, that's perfect answer right there. 1, you would. 2, you wouldn't. And 3, I might try it. Wow, that's a lot of 2s. Well, you say that now. Watch when it's like $8 cheaper, when steaks are $40 or something, and lab-grown meat is $2. Go ahead, Dex.
No, what really will happen is you'll be eating, your favorite fast food place or taco place, and you'll find out later that it's lab-grown.
Well, everyone here doesn't eat at fast food because that's absolutely wrong. Just kidding. But this community, everybody yells at you for if you even say McDonald's, you're like, don't eat that stuff. All of us have partaked in fast food at one time or another. I think that some people actually hide that from others, and I'm like, sometimes it's all you, man. Especially, you know what they've made? They've made it to where fast food was more affordable than actually going to the store. Even if you bought in bulk, it was at that one point where. It was, especially when I was growing up, it was $1 to feed yourself for, a hamburger that could get you through. Or especially when I was working 2 jobs and you barely had any money and you had a lunch and it's like you couldn't pack something if you were, 8 hours in or something. You would go over to Taco Bell or Taco Schmel or something and get $1 thing that was a huge burrito and it filled you for the next 5 or 6 hours. It's like that was cheaper than the alternative. So eating junky was cheaper than eating healthy. When you go to the health food store, you get a organic fruit and it's like, $4. It's insane. They've set up the system so where that you are unhealthy. I realized probably, 5 or 6 years ago, I think I was around 30 when it really started hitting, like you have to eat good, otherwise you will be sick. And as you get older, your system stops repairing as fast, and you are what you eat. You are literally, when you're young, you can eat almost anything and bounce back. But you can't do that when you get older. It just doesn't happen. But yeah. But I like when people say, I've never done that. I've never touched it. Pretty much all of us have in one way or another. All right. And then, again, thank you everybody for coming to today's show. Make sure if you don't have long-term survival food, go over and check out marfooglenews.com/prep. You can get 25-year shelf life freeze-dried foods, and you can help our channel out at the same time. This gives you a huge discount. Right now, they have the largest discount they've ever had, which is $250 off on the 3-month supply. But if you don't have the ability to do that, you can do a little bit at a time. You can get single meals. You can get 3-day kits, 72-hour kits you can throw in a go bag. Lots of great stuff over there, marfooglenews.com/prep. Dex, do you want to go over the web only? There's a lot of it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Head over to marfooglenews.com, click on the thumbnail for the show, or open up the description, click on the show notes link on either of the platforms. It'll take you right here. You can get to all the news that we covered. You want to get to this overflow section. That's where the rest of the story is. Sam Bankman is basically had a text interview with a reporter, and the reporter posted all those texts. So if you want to see what happened there, I don't think it was a gotcha moment, but if you're wanting to follow more about what was going on with FTX, he is the CEO that's sort of, I don't want to say hiding out, but he's sort of hanging out in the Bahamas, hoping that nothing else happens to him and trying to raise a lot of money for all these people that lost it. The iCountry, apparently MI5 came out with some more information and said that there was, from the iCountry, they had basically tried to, off a bunch of British residents 10 times this year. That's pretty significant. So that's the kind of news that you're going to find in here. If you go to the overflow, that's just a highlight of it. There's a lot more. There's updates on Qatar. There's the whole updates going on with the political spectrum and T-Man and what's happening there, both sides, lots of sides of it. We also have updates on Elon and what's going on with Twitter, because that tends to be a big topic for some folks, and it's there as well, and some other economic issues and things that are going on, including some TikTokers and some fun things that are happening. So if you want to see the rest of the story and you want to get everything else, just head over to marfooglenews.com or open up that show notes link in the description. You can get to all of this and so much more.
Well, thank you, Dex. And tonight there's not going to be a shoutro. Again, I am actually heading to a karate presentation. So I am going to say goodnight, and tomorrow we will have a call-in show, so make sure to tune into that at 224-400-MARF. Make sure to call in. I appreciate all of you guys and love you. Please be safe, be prepared, and Marf out. See you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Told you this is gonna be bad. Better have yourself and your family a plan. I don't care what your mama told you, this is gonna be